Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 55 of I Wish You Were Dead, a podcast about things that used to be alive. My name is Mike, and that is Gavin. And Gavin, this is not going to be one of the essential episodes that we've ever done.
It is not. Today is going to be more or less our holiday special. So happy. This one is coming out in between the week of New Year's and Christmas.
Which, by
Uh,
the way, just like a quick shout out to that period of time. Like, I'm not even really sure what day of the week it is. There's nothing going on. There's like family vaguely hanging around and friends that are going to do stuff. This is a nice little period of time to just like exist in an amorphous space.
yeah, exactly. Also, if you don't happen to celebrate Christmas, happy whatever you happen to celebrate. I don't think we actually said anything about that last episode. I don't think we said anything about any particular holiday last episode, but
Yeah.
happy
Happy,
Christmas Kwanzaa.
yeah. Did you throw a Festivus at the very end of that?
I sure did for any other holiday that people might celebrate. But
Just I hope everybody out there is either enjoying the holiday season, or hopefully you've got a couple of days off.
yeah,
Or hopefully there's something going on that even if you don't celebrate a particular holiday, which, man, holidays are weird, aren't they?
they
When you
sure
think about it.
are.
Hopefully you get something going on at this period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. So normally, how statistically how we've done this podcast, all 55 episodes, maybe not all 55 episodes, but
Well, I mean, we've only done 54 up until this point. This is
well, you're
55.
right. So 54 episodes. I would say at least 2/3 have opened with us reading from what we have just called the calendar.
I've never
And
seen the calendar.
true. Okay, so me reading from the calendar. That was a desktop calendar for this day in science or something to that effect. I don't remember exactly what it was called, but that my mom got for me as like a stocking stuffer, like a little desktop calendar that she got for me for last Christmas, 2020, and it was really bad. It was There was just not a lot of good scientific content. I felt like most of the time that we spent talking about the calendar was me being like, okay. Uh,
Yeah,
that's not quite right.
it was basically you saying, whatever fact was on the calendar that day, this is somewhere between grossly oversimplified and factually incorrect, was
Right.
where the calendar fell.
There were a few good ones in there. Or either that or they were, especially early on when I just did like the specific day that the episode came out on. After a while, after a string of a couple that weren't related to the podcast at all, I would go do like this week and look through the entire week to see if there was something, related to the topic of this podcast in there.
Hmm.
But at least for the first handful, probably, I just didn't know enough about whatever topic it was talking about to actually critique it. Where I would just read it and be like, "Okay, episode time." Um, but for this particular episode here, I went through the calendar from when we stopped, and if I were a good podcast host, I would have looked up what the last episode we did in the calendar was. It was sometime in mid October.
I was gonna say it's been a little bit. We sort of quietly, semi quietly retired it.
Right. So I would say probably sometime around episode 40, give or take.
That
Uh,
seems reasonable.
and so that was, I believe, October 18th was the date that was last on the calendar because I haven't even looked through it since we stopped using it for the podcast until I went through and sort of handpicked a handful of dates just to sort of go over, talk about either that I thought were interesting, that have something to do with the podcast, or that I read and wanted particularly to dunk on. So we're gonna
And so
be
here we are.
we're gonna be going through sort of rapid fire, and I'm gonna go in sort of chronological order. So this one is from October 25th, and actually brings me to my other point. Mike, do you want to guess years for these?
You know what? Sure. And let's say, so how many do you have actually? I want to set a number
That's
if I
an
get
excellent question. 3.
because what I'm thinking is if I can get, you know, X amount right, then I win. I win something. Well, I guess we'll have to decide what I win.
Roughly 20.
Rough. Oh boy, 20. So I'm going to say,
which we will cut for time if this ends up taking forever. But
yeah, we can. There's no
um,
reason we can't do part one, part two.
yeah, that's true.
I will. So let's say if I get 5 out of 20, if I can bat 25%, if I can do
Yeah.
25%,
All right. So this
because
is
right, this is not like multiple choice here. This is,
exactly.
I'm just guessing here. I think 25% is a perfectly respectable percentage here.
Absolutely. So this first one, October 25th. Hit me with a year.
Do I get a topic? Not that's really going to help me, but
Falling in love takes 1/5 of a second. Is the headline for this.
t- I feel like I feel like you and I have both heard this before. 2011.
So close. 2010.
Oh,
The reason I picked this though will become evident. So again, the title, Falling in Love takes 1/5 of a second. And it says, using brain scans and measurements of blood flow within the brain, neurologists from Syracuse University,
hey, I've been there.
yeah, me too, determined that the mechanics of love occur almost instantaneously. These mechanics, in which all 12 areas of the brain collaborate to release dopamine, oxytocin, and adrenaline, instantly affect a person's body image and cognitive functions. Though love is a full brain reaction, scientists say that particular types of love, such as passionate love or unconditional love, trigger specific parts of the brain more intensely. I don't really have any comments on that one other than go Orange Man.
Uh, Orange.
Orange, I know it's okay, fine. It's orange now. It used to
Yes,
be Orange Man.
this is correct. They changed it a little bit because when you start
Right.
thinking about it, it's like, ooh, they
Yeah.
used that name for a while.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, so this is one of those things where obviously you're using a flashy title here,
Right.
falling
This
in
is
love,
something
take
that you would see on like a morning talk
like
show.
or like a pop science kind of thing.
Oh,
Um,
this would fit in very nicely with like drinking a glass of wine prevents cancer or something like that.
right, exactly. And so I can absolutely believe that, some sort of attraction sets in, that quickly. I have definitely laid eyes upon, various people and be like, oh, yes. But love, what is love?
And that is a question that we will not be answering today because I don't understand anything about how humans work. Um,
No, not even. I was hoping you were going to give me a "Baby Don't Hurt Me No More," but I guess we can
oh,
move on to number two. All right, so I'm
yeah.
0 for 1.
Yep. So November 4th now, and the headline, GMO wheat promises 40% increased crop yield.
2013.
No, 2016.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah,
All right. So GMOs. So before we even begin, like GMOs, we're pretty solidly on the GMOs are good train, right?
we sure are.
All right. Good.
Obviously, you need to be careful. Just in general, you can't, you shouldn't do it without properly understanding what you're doing. But like these days, you know, I'm just gonna like the whole organic movement, especially now that I live in California. Everything is organic, or like whole stores are dedicated to like organic food, and it's like people think that it's sustainable, but it's not. The
Mm-hmm.
only better thing about organic food is that they don't use pesticides, which are bad for the environment. That's like the only beneficial thing. GMOs, for reasons that I'm sure that this will explain, because it talks about increased crop yields, uh, they basically, you can grow more plants in a smaller area. And that's one of the really beneficial things about GMOs. But
Yeah. I mean, it's while you go ahead and attend to your dog rustling in the background.
no, that's
Uh,
okay. She's doing fine.
well, okay. Go ahead and read the thing, and then I'll see if I have anything I want to add on that.
Sure. So, bioengineers from the University of Hertfordshire in
That's
England.
not real. That's a fake place.
I also agree. That sounds fake. In England, produced a genetically modified variant of common wheat that exhibits an optimized form of photosynthesis, incorporating genes from a grass known as stiff brome. This strain is highly efficient at using carbon dioxide, a quality that researchers say will result in harvests of up to 40% increased yield. Following greenhouse trials, the wheat will advance to large scale tests and potential mass production.
So I guess my only critique with the calendar on this one is that it's reporting on something from 5 years ago. That's just
without
like
any kind of
early.
update.
Right,
Yeah,
yeah, like early trials show this, and then it does kind of detail here are some of the next steps that it would go down. You would like to see some, what has happened since then, but
yeah,
I'll give that one a B for the calendar.
yeah. That one's pretty good, and it gives us a
Right,
chance to talk about GMOs because the 40% is what kind of got me because I'm like that's a lot.
right. That's we talk so often about how many people on the planet are going hungry or are food insecure or a number of things, and it's like,
Yeah.
man, there's a number of different ways to go about solving that kind of problem. I know that for anybody who's familiar with like the company Soylent,
Hmm.
I know that they, at least at their founding, I'm not sure if they've continued with this, have tried to find ways to send ready to go meals, sort of like the equivalent of MREs to people. But man, just having plants that grow better and make more stuff,
Yeah,
like
having
that seems to
uh,
be a much more direct solution.
imagine having 40% more global wheat yield. Like that by itself would, I would say, probably cut global hunger. I mean, assuming that's distributed properly.
Correct.
Um,
Well,
like assuming that would cut like global hunger at least in half. I don't study that kind of thing, but I have to imagine if we have almost 50% more, you know, that'll cut it down by a lot.
and this is something that with the whole GMOs and labeling, you have to put a label on something, whether or not it
Which I
uses
do agree with
GMOs.
that. I do agree with
I
that.
I I'm more against it now than I used to be
I think
because
people in general should have a right to know what they're eating.
I agree. My big thing was with making the whole separate labels and everything, and I will freely admit I don't have a completely developed opinion on this. I could be convinced very
Yeah.
easily. But it is feeding into this kind of panic about GMOs,
Yeah.
and it's okay. It like you said that there are all organic stores, and you want to buy things that are no GMO because GMOs are bad. You don't know why they're bad, but they're bad, and it's sort of feeding into this panic of just having the label. Whereas you could include it in any number of other places, or we could all agree that, again, based on the science, like you said, as long as you're not slapdicking this around and you're taking the proper precautions, you know, GMOs are, one
Well,
of the silver bullets that we might have.
and what's really stupid to me about it is like your dog's a GMO.
Yes.
All
Yeah.
corn is all corn is at least grown in North America,
Yep.
or at least to be a little more specific, the United States. I don't really want to speak for like Canada, but uh,
Hmm.
most of the corn grown in the U.S. is not even just a single species. It's basically clones of the same individual plant.
Hmm.
And so that's just not healthy or sustainable. Like there does need to be some kind of diversity, and that is something else that or doing organic stuff does a little bit better. Um, but like corn, if you were to see pure wild corn, you would not recognize it because we have
Right.
bred it to be the way we want. And granted, could we breed this wheat to have more efficient photosynthesis? Yeah, it might take a couple hundred years, but we could do it. Um, and that's all this does is increase the speed at which we can selectively breed things. That's all it does.
Right. So I don't know exactly how well GMOs fit into kind of the general goal of this podcast, but if we could have an episode on GMOs at some point, that I think that'd be a fun and larger discussion to have, but we may have to put that aside for a
Yeah.
little while.
So moving on, we have a twofer. And like there are a couple twofers in here. So on the weekends on the calendar, they put a Saturday and Sunday on the same page.
Hmm.
In a very rare instance, both of these are actually somewhat relevant. So
Oh,
we have
somewhat relevant to what?
the podcast and also my personal interest. Um, so we have November 6th and 7th.
My
So
birthday.
yeah. So do you have a year?
Oh, I will say,
I'll give you 2. You can guess 2 years.
so we'll go with my 21st birthday, so 2016.
You got another year?
I'll take that one as a no.
That would be a no.
I'll go 2011 again.
Yeah, you were right in the middle the first time. So we have one from 2018 and one from 2014. So the first one from 2018 says, quote unquote, bioreactor helps frog regenerate legs.
I have a definition question, but continue.
About the bioreactor thing?
The hell's a bioreactor?
I don't know. I doubt, frankly, that it will define it well for us anyway. But so frogs are amphibians, and not as much frogs, but salamanders, which obviously are also amphibians, are really good at regenerating body parts. Like, in most species of salamander, if you cut off like a leg, it will just grow it back.
Why can't we do that?
There's a lot of complicated reasons. I think it's a lot of things to do with like their stem cells. I think that they maintain stem cells throughout their entire life, whereas we don't, or at least not awesome. Maybe not the right kind of stem cells. I don't understand that side of biology very much. But it's like, there are lots of reptiles that, particularly lizards, that can pop off their tail. For example, I have a pet leopard gecko. If I were to grab her by the tail, she could purposefully break off her tail and it would grow back. However, in lizards, they don't grow back actual bone. They just grow back a stiff cartilage instead of it being actual bone. But salamanders can grow back like actual bone.
Wow.
Which is really, there's a lot of, research institutions dumping a lot of money into figuring out how they do that. So anyway, a little background.
Try and see what those applications are for, for humans.
Exactly.
I would imagine.
And so that's just a little bit of background. I don't think frogs can quite do that good of a job at it, but
unless they have
a bioreactor. So anyway, we'll read it. Developmental biologists, which are people who mostly study like embryos and things like that, like how things get from a fertilized egg to an actual organism, announced the creation of a bioreactor, which they say can, quote unquote, kickstart tissue regeneration in frogs. Constructed from silicon and almost entirely 3D printed, the bioreactor is filled with a mixture of hydrogel and silk proteins, which allows scientists to artificially activate the frog's natural healing abilities. Interesting.
I got nothing on that.
Yeah, there's a lot of science words in there. So it kind of looks like they're using the 3D printing to like build the bones, and it's growing the tissue back on top of them. That's what it sounds like to me.
Okay. I mean, that seems cool.
Right. And it's like I said, frogs aren't particularly known for doing that kind of thing, for growing whole limbs back like salamanders are. So I don't know if they can regrow bone by themselves. But it's an interesting thing to be looking into, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, I got nothing to add on to that.
Oh, one of our dogs is now throwing toys around. It's
oh boy,
it's her playtime, I guess.
Well, hey, mate, we're having fun on this episode. We got the dog on.
Exactly.
I hear Liz in the background.
So the other one, the one from 2014. There's so much happening in my apartment right now.
I'm glad we get to document that.
The one from 2014. The reason why I chose this one.
Why are we still doing the calendar? Can you just narrate? Can you just like commentate on the fight that's going on between your dogs and your fiance?
Oh no, so it was mostly the one bigger dog. So we have a golden retriever named Lottie. She's great. She just decided that now was the time to pick up her big stuffed rabbit and throw it around. Um, and then we have our smaller little puppy that we're fostering, Maple, who is sitting on the bed whining because she wants to play, but she actually just got fixed today, so she's a little bit laid up. Otherwise, I think she might have jumped off the bed to join. And Liz is trying so hard to be quiet. So as soon as Lottie just starts throwing things around, she just kind of busted out laughing.
You tell Liz she can be as loud as she wants.
Mike says you can be as loud as you want. She just okay. Well,
Gavin, you picked the right one.
Mike and the rest of the podcast heard that, so thank you. Oh, not the squeaker. And we can, Mike, you can cut however much of this out as you would like.
I'm not cutting a damn thing. Let's keep going.
All right. Anyway, so 2014. The reason I chose this one should become evident. This one's from November 7th, that same weekend. Coffee genes identified in humans. So, most people who know me, especially when I was in undergrad, not as much in the last couple of years, but know that I am very much addicted to caffeine and drink a lot of coffee. So the fact that might have inserted coffee genes into me, I want to know more.
That seems like it would remove a step or two if they were just already inside you.
So, geneticists from the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health found that 6 specific genes relating to caffeine and glucose metabolism were key to a person's coffee tendencies. Future tests might quickly indicate whether an individual, quote-unquote, should drink coffee and how much. What? Okay, so it's not genes of coffee in a person. It's genes in people, like your reactivity, I guess, like how strongly you react to caffeine, I guess is what that is meaning.
I mean, okay. I mean, again, that is an interesting thing to know.
Poorly phrased, but
yeah,
that's okay.
If you just told me like there was a study talking about just how receptive some people are to caffeine or to coffee in general, like, oh, okay, I'm game.
Right,
I've
that's
never
something
had a cup
that I
of
would
coffee
assume.
in my life.
Yeah,
but
which I still can't believe.
Somebody had chocolate covered coffee beans the other day at a place I was at. I was like, I'll try one. I put it in my mouth, took one bite, immediately spit it out.
Really?
I'm like, you guys enjoy that? Man, I got nothing.
Moving on to the next one. We've got November 8th.
Damn it. I was just going to guess before you told me anything because this hasn't worked out so far. All right, November 8th.
Yeah. So
2016 is calling me 8. 8 times 2, 16. I'm going 2016.
You are correct.
Hey! All right, so I got 1.
So you are currently 1 for 5. You're 1 for 5.
That's okay.
So the headline: Giant magmatic lake detected beneath Bolivian volcano. So
you say magmatic?
Magmatic, yeah. Basically, it's a lava chamber or magma chamber is what that means. So, calling it a lake is a bit apocryphal. There's no water; it's just a big bubble of magma. But I mean, maybe there is water. I don't know. An international group of researchers completed their study of a dormant volcano in Bolivia, which is in central South America, for anybody not aware. And the massive molten lake buried 15 kilometers, and then in parentheses, it just says 9 miles, so thank you for that. Beneath it, measurements showed that the lake holds as much water. Oh, so it is water. That makes... I have even more questions now. Yeah, measurements showed that the lake holds as much water as Lake Superior in North America, which is like the 3rd largest lake in the world.
It's a big one.
And that this water is primarily dissolved into layers of molten and solid rock surrounding the chamber. That makes more sense. So it's not just a big bowl of water sitting under this volcano. It's like within all the rocks. That makes more sense to me. The survey was intended to discover the role of such subterranean bodies of water in volcanic eruptions, and whether their analysis may provide a method for early detection of eruptions. So, there is a ton of water in the ground. Like, there is more water not here in California, but in the ground than there is like in rivers and lakes and stuff, like by a lot.
We say that there's more water in the ground than like
There is like on the
freestanding or
surface.
flowing.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah, by a lot.
Okay.
Obviously not including the ocean in that.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that does
That
not
was part of
include
what was in my
oceans.
head.
No, that doesn't include oceans.
Okay.
Um,
So rivers, lakes,
right, yeah.
tributaries, seas, um,
Well, seas are
pools.
tricky. Seas are technically on continental, uh, like shelves, not in like oceans themselves. There is an actual difference between seas and oceans, even if
Okay.
sometimes parts of the ocean are labeled as a sea. It's weird. It it has a meaning, but most people don't use it correctly. Um.
Understood. I
Anyway.
mean, no, but not understood. But I'll go with you on that.
uh. But yeah, so understanding the water, because water plays a really important role in eruptions as well. It changes a lot of things with the chemistry and affects what kind of rocks can form from volcanic eruptions, or say the volcano forms but doesn't erupt, but it's got the big magma chamber underneath. The kind of rocks that forms as it cools, the water can really highly affect the chemistry and affect what kinds of minerals can form because of that. Um, but I hadn't really heard of it being used as a way to detect, like potential eruptions. So that's an interesting thing that I don't really know that much about. Then again,
Yeah, I mean, correct me if
I
I'm
took
wrong.
like half a class about volcanoes.
Right, I was
So
gonna say like earthquakes and volcanic eruptions are one of those things that we. Correct me if I'm wrong. We just don't have very good. Like we can't predict that very far in the future until it's like happening or close to it.
volcanoes more than earthquakes, but still not
Right, I
very
was gonna say even
reliably.
right even then it's we are talking. It's not much. Was always my understanding.
Yeah.
It's not like I could say there's gonna be Haley's comet is gonna come on this day at this time.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Whereas with volcanoes and earthquakes, it's like happening now.
Exactly. Or at the very least will happen
Yeah, right. It'll
in
happen
the
later today.
next. Yeah, right. So moving on, we have November 12th.
All right, so I'm 1 for 5.
Yep.
2015.
No, 2009.
Okay, 2009. That's further back than this normally goes. All right.
There are, I will tell you, there are a couple oldies in here.
Okay, that's gonna help.
So, headline: Dark chocolate eases stress.
This is another one of like the pop science.
Yep,
Like,
and
yeah,
it's like
okay.
I eat a lot of dark chocolate. Like I prefer dark chocolate. Uh,
Ugh,
hasn't helped
all
me
right.
any. Uh, so the results of a study from the American Chemical Society. I'd like to know how much money they receive from the chocolate industry, but moving on.
Yep.
Provided yet more evidence that consumption of dark chocolate has a marked and beneficial effect on emotional stress in humans. Following clinical trials, experts reported that eating only an ounce of dark chocolate per day for 2 weeks resulted in stress hormones in resulted in reduced stress hormones in almost every subject. That reduced carries a lot of weight in that sentence. Uh, ad- Additionally, regular consumption helps regulate other stress-related biochemical imbalances such as metabolism rates and general hormone production. While the relationship between dark chocolate and emotional health has long been a subject of parody and old wives' tales, I agree. This clinical evidence indicates those who are feeling emotionally stressed or run down might do well to reach for some dark chocolate. I don't have anything else to say about that other than I'm sure that there was a little bit of nefarious money in there, just as uh, uh, anybody not from the United States uh, might not know. There's a ton of bad influential money in American politics, and very similarly, that happens a lot in research studies like this. Because who did that say that was done by? The American Chemical Society. Yeah, uh, I'd be very surprised if the chocolate industry didn't give them money. Um, Anywho, I don't really have anything else to comment about that. Do you?
No, I think you said it all very well, so I'm not going to add anything else.
Awesome. So we have another twofer. We have November 13th and 14th.
Okay, so you told me that there was going to be some oldies in there, but I'm going to say that we skip an oldie and this one is actually from 2012, or one of them is
Nope.
from 2012.
Nope.
Okay, so well, that was a bad strategy. Let's go back. 05.
You were so close with the first one. So the first one is from 2013,
Oh,
and the second
okay.
one's from 2018.
See, my first instinct was
I'm
correct, but
psyching you out a little bit.
this is rough. This is some rough stuff.
This
All
is
right,
very fun for me.
I'm sure it is.
So the first one, gene therapy reverses heart failure. Pretty cool. Although that's not the one that I chose this twofer weekend one for, so I'm just gonna skip that one.
Because you hate people.
Yeah, they just don't interest me very much. The second one, much more interesting to me, from 2018. Seismic activity consumes huge amounts of water.
Seismic activity consumes
Yes.
huge amounts of water.
Yep. So,
Okay, now you've piqued my interest.
geophysicists from Washington University in St. Louis published their research on water consumed by the Earth's crust through regular tectonic activity. Experts explain that seismic shifts consume almost triple the amount of water previously assumed, and it is unclear if this water is stored or expelled in another way, such as through volcanic activity. Because this is a weekend one, they tend to be shorter. But so,
Okay.
like I said, on that last one about the underwater lake thing, uh, it, the Earth's crust has lots and lots of water in it. And in lots of places, the Earth's crust is being sucked down toward the core by other plates. The more dense plate will get sucked underneath the less dense plate, because that's how density works. And any water that is in those rocks goes with it. So basically, they're saying there's more water being sucked down in that way than they had thought, and presumably that is how the water got to that volcanic lake thing that we talked about a few minutes ago. So neat.
Okay. All right, on to the next one. I'm assuming this is just going up through the rest of this year, right?
Yeah, and
Okay.
I'll let's see. No, we got time. I was gonna say I'll try to speed it up a little bit and pick some of the more interesting ones, but some of these are like I said, some are important,
quick
some are
hits.
just weird.
Yeah.
This one falls into like the important category because I think it's just really neat and something I want to talk about. So, November 15th.
Well, if it's important, then it obviously has to be from 2008.
No, 2016.
Double it. All right.
Antibody can neutralize almost all HIV strains.
Ooh. I actually remember reading about this when I was. It might not be this exact thing. But I remember when I was a sophomore in high school. So this is going back to 2010, 2011.
Mm-hmm.
Reading a story about how somebody who had cancer and also had HIV got a blood transfusion.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is related to that, but basically the story was the guy got a blood transfusion. It helped cure his cancer, but also there's this incredibly rare gene in humans or some sort of mutation in humans that basically makes it so that way the HIV is inside you, but it can't replicate or it can't really harm you. If I
Right.
remember
And I
correctly.
think there was actually a case of somebody finding another person with that gene, because I think to my knowledge there's only been 2 people found.
Really?
Yeah.
It's that
If
rare.
if to be fair, it's not like we have the genetics of every single person.
Not yet.
Big brother coming for you.
There it is.
But yeah, so this goes on to say a team of researchers from the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, which is what Dr. Anthony Fauci is one of like the head people on,
Mm-hmm.
identified a human antibody present in HIV positive individuals that effectively neutralized 98% of HIV isolates, which are the things that actually cause like problems within the body. Named N6, the antibody displays unprecedented effectiveness across a broad range of HIV strains, presenting the viral replication in 16 of 20 documented strains. Though other HIV prevention agents were undergoing trials, researchers said that at this time, N6 was ostensibly more effective than anything previously discovered. So that's really good
Hmm.
news.
Yeah.
Because that is actually what Dr. Fauci was much more well known for before COVID happened.
Well,
He
he was one of the
was
few guys sounding the alarm back in the 80s and being like, hey, like, Ron, we got to do
exactly,
something about this.
exactly. And then the former President Reagan, in all his infinite wisdom, was like, nah.
I mean, to be fair, though, to Ronald Reagan, like,
Are
the
you
man had
defending
dementia.
Reagan right now? Are you a Reagan
I
apologist?
I was making a dementia joke more than anything. Like, who,
Okay, I'll allow it. I'll allow
let's
it.
let's have some sympathy for a man that wasn't quite sure where he was all the time.
That's
I am
touche.
I am I am halfway making a joke. However, there are stories about particularly the
Yeah.
tail end
Mm-hmm.
of Reagan's administration. There was a meeting at one point in 1987 where basically a bunch of people were concerned about Reagan's just ability to continue to be president, and there was a meeting that was supposed to be about just something. And the whole idea was they were going to go through this meeting with Reagan, and if he didn't pass the test, so to speak, that they were going to, the cabinet was going to invoke Section 4 of the 25th Amendment
Mm-hmm.
and, essentially remove him from power. He went through the meeting with flying colors. People said okay, and Reagan finished out his term, and a lot of that, came out
Who was his
afterwards.
vice president at that time?
Oh, come
It doesn't
on!
matter. It doesn't matter.
It was a
Oh,
man by
it
the
was. Oh,
name.
okay. It was Bush, wasn't it?
Yes, it was George H.W. Bush.
Yeah.
Was his vice president. There was going to be a thing with Gerald Ford, who he had originally talked to back in 1980. This is not a Ronald Reagan podcast, so we will
Yeah, let's move on.
we will talk about that later. But there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in the 80s.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have November 16th. Do you have a year?
I mean, you told me there was going to be some earlier ones. There hasn't been any earlier ones. I feel bamboozled.
I promise you that they will come.
Okay, you said they will come, which means that they're not here yet. So, oh man, I don't, man, 2015 and kick me in the nuts or something. Go ahead.
2016.
Man, all right, okay. I feel better about that actually. All right,
Yeah, you were close.
yeah.
So we've talked a bit about climate change and volcanoes and things. Sorry, we're now chewing on squeaky toys, I guess. So we've talked a bit about climate change and volcanoes and how it's a little bit of a climate denier's, pocket sand. The tool that they use to get out of situations that they don't want to be in. And there's a little bit of truth to that, but we're going to explore this a little bit. So the headline is, it's sort of an Uno reverse card in this particular situation.
Oh,
Climate change impairs volcanoes' cooling abilities because volcanoes, much unknown to climate deniers, long term have a cooling effect on the climate, not a warming effect.
wait, really?
Depending on the scale, time scale you're looking at, yeah.
How?
So the geologists from the University of British Columbia published their work regarding the effects of mounting climate change and the reduced ability of volcanic eruptions to offset rising temperatures. Experts say that volcanic eruptions, which historically work as one of Earth's natural cooling mechanics by filling the air with reflective aerosol particles, are no longer able to keep up with the accelerating effects of climate change. Additionally, scientists say that as the planet warms, the lower levels of its atmosphere expand, impeding the travel of particles traveling upward into the stratosphere. Speaking in exact terms, scientists say that they expect the volume of volcanic gas in the stratosphere to decrease by almost 25% by the 23rd century. So, long story short, uh, they release lots of particles that reflect light, which, if they're that far up in the atmosphere, just reflect it back out into space. And reflecting light means reflecting heat. And then also some of the gases that they put off as well have a cooling effect. But so basically, they're saying that volcanoes can't keep up with how bad we're screwing up the climate. And
Wow.
so
Okay.
there's a separate conversation to be had about a concept called geoengineering,
I've
which is
heard
which
this
is
term
not
before.
geological engineering; those are different. Um, but geoengineering is basically uh, using technology to solve problems such as climate change, which inherently sounds like a good thing. But geoengineering is perhaps goes a little too far with things, and people who are proponents of geoengineering have suggested just blasting a whole bunch of particles of reflective stuff into the atmosphere uh, to basically do what this volcanic ash does and reflect all the sunlight. Um, and it's like, yeah, that could work, but plants need that, and we need plants. Um, you
Also, it
might
just
have
sounds hard.
you might have noticed that.
Like
Oh
everything with
yeah, and
geoengineering, it's just
yeah,
like have we considered the scale of what we're trying to do here?
right. It's very much a Jurassic Park situation where it's like you were so preoccupied about whether you could, you didn't stop to think if you should.
Yeah.
So, um, moving on. November 22nd. November was a very big month. There are less for December, I promise.
Okay.
December's less interesting. People are doing holidays and stuff.
November 22nd, 2009.
No, 2016.
I feel lied to. I just
There's a couple coming. Okay, there's one one I'm confident will be the oldest one that we've talked about so far. And there's a couple coming up that are again quite old relative to the average, I'll say. I'm not
how about
lying, I promise. I might
can
have
we
misled you slightly, but I'm
just
not lying.
just a little bit. Can we how about this? A proposal for a slight rule change. You have to tell me whether it is 2009 or before or 2010 and sooner.
Okay, I'll do that.
Deal. All right.
So I forget, did you guess this one yet?
Yeah, I said
Yes,
a
you did.
wrong one.
Okay. So, headline: Huge frozen underground lake found on Mars. We're apparently really liking, whenever I picked these out,
Lots of lakes. Yeah.
I was really liking the underground lakes. Data collected from hundreds of routine passes by NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter over the Utopia Planitia region of Mars. That's the name of a region of Mars, I guess. Um, Showed a sizable mass of frozen water, approximately the size of New Mexico. It's a lot of water. Uh, NASA,
Just using states as
yeah, right.
our unit of measurement here. Like,
It's like the standard math or like scientific unit. How many Volkswagen Beetles does that weigh? Uh, Apparently, in space, they just measure things in states. Same. NASA representatives say that the frozen lake is shallowly buried beneath a layer of Martian soil only a meter thick in some places and stretches throughout a large impact depression in the planet's northern latitudes. Scientists have theorized that the lake could be trapped or could be tapped for resources on future colonization missions to Mars, potentially providing not only water but also raw components for oxygen and other chemicals vital to prolonged manned missions. I'm
yeah, I mean,
not
isn't that
gonna touch Mars colonization.
you don't wanna?
I know, not
What
not right
can I
now.
can I ask you why? Can I ask you why you don't want to touch it? Like meta question. Why not?
I don't think it's I think it distracts from other things. I don't think it's a viable thing that we should really even be talking about until we fix our own planet first.
Okay. Are you against like long term? Are you against like long term bases on Mars that are self sustaining, and do you think that's just unsustainable, or are you against even sending human beings there for shorter term missions? I want to
I mean,
understand
the
exact.
shorter term missions would probably be fine. Um, and I'll try and find the tweet because somebody who is like a geophysicist like was like, man, if Elon Musk took even one geology class, he'd know that colonizing Mars is like infinitely harder than he pitches it to be.
I've heard some people say that it is more difficult than he makes it sound on like late night talk shows.
Right. And
So
it's like that's not going to happen in any of our lifetimes.
okay, I
Um
just wanted to make sure that I understood your trepidation. Was it with just sending any human being to Mars, or was it the idea of a moon base? And it sounds like it's or a Mars base, and it sounds like Mars base is your hang up.
well, and my own personal feelings would be I don't trust any individual business person to be the one to do it. That just seems very dystopian future to me.
Hmm.
Like I'd rather it be a joint governmental thing. But
Yeah,
anyway,
I mean that.
that's my own feelings.
Yeah,
Um,
hard to completely disagree with that. But all right, we can move on.
so November 24th, and so run it back to me. How am I giving this to you,
Is
year
it
wise?
2009 or before, or is it 2010 or sooner?
It is 2009 or before.
All right, so finally, I'm going to say, you said that you thought 2003.
2009, and that's why I had you clarify. So I'm like, which side of this is it going on?
That I guess that should have been my clue. You said earlier this was going to that coming up soon was going to be like one of the oldest that you thought we had. So,
Oh no, I said within this. I guarantee you'll be the oldest one.
well, I mean, like definitionally, one of them will be the oldest one we discuss. So,
Well, I meant like total, including when we used to do it on every show.
okay,
Yeah. So anyway,
all right.
2009, Darwin's On the Origin of Species celebrates its 150th anniversary.
Oh, this is cheating
Why?
because then it is not from 2009.
It's
It's
from
from
1859.
18 whatever the hell. Like, yeah, that's, I don't have
So
a problem with like picking this because is my understanding is that it's reasonably influential and important, but it's not 2009.
anyway, originally published on this day in 1859, Charles Darwin's On the Origin of Species celebrated its 150th anniversary in 2009. The book, whose initial print run immediately sold out, has stood the test of time as one of science's landmark texts, detailing Darwin's travels throughout the world and specifically the Galapagos Islands off the coast of Ecuador. On the Origin of Species popularized the heady work of zoology and geology in a way that captivated even non scientists and brought the realms of science and public life into contact in ways that had rarely been seen. Despite a century and a half of innovations and exploration, critical tenets of Darwin's books have stood the test of time, an impressive feat considering the limitations of his day. So yeah, good for you, Chucky D. You know, you're still moving and shaking things 150 years later.
Correct.
You know that we
I'm
wouldn't have
still
this
mad. I'm
podcast
still
without
mad
him.
about
So
this. I'm I'm still mad about 150. Get out of here with that.
yeah. Um, let's see. So we have a weekend one, but I'll just pick the one that I was interested in. So this is November 28th, and it is 2010 or sooner.
2014.
2018.
All right.
You're gonna get one. You're gonna get
I
one
already have
more.
one.
You're gonna get one more.
You
I
are,
believe in
we're
you.
going for two now. No, five is out of reach. We're going for two.
New method for eliminating carbon dioxide is the headline.
New
Spoilers,
method for.
they're called trees.
I was right. I was going to say I thought we had that, but
Oh, we do, but I mean, maybe there was a new. Well, yeah, it says new method, so something else besides trees.
how much carbon
Engineers.
dioxide does it take to make one of these things? But okay, go
That's
ahead.
a really fair point. Engineers from the Tokyo Institute of Technology unveiled a process designed to directly eliminate toxic CO2 from the atmosphere. The process uses an electrocatalytic system to reduce ambient levels of the pollutant, trapping or transforming them into less harmful chemicals. And because it's a weekend one, that's all we get.
Yeah, this seems like one of those things that like gets put into a list on a half-hour TV program one time for like overly ambitious school children. Like, here are the different ways that we could solve climate change, and nothing ever comes out of that.
Yep, and it's like, oh, these guys in Tokyo are doing something cool. Moving on. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, which is what we will do.
yeah, absolutely. So November 29th, 2010 or sooner.
I'm gonna double up. 2014.
2016.
This is hard for everybody playing along at home. This is tough stuff.
It is. It absolutely is. And so, but I think you'll like this headline because I picked this one because it is just so wacky that I'm like, there's no way that that's true. Platypus venom
I'm into it. I'm into it already. Say
may
no more.
may offer diabetes treatment. That was not the turn you thought it would take, but here we are.
There was a couple of hard left-hand turns in that one.
Yeah, so if anybody is not aware, platypi, the males have a spur on each of their hind feet that is venomous. Just the males. And because of that, it is probably used in some form of like sexual competition for mates. As far as I know, we don't really know what it's for, but they have it. So, with that context, a team of Australian researchers from the University of Adelaide discovered that platypus venom exhibits the same insulin regulating capabilities found in the animal's own bodies. What? Anyway, I'll keep going. While biologists have long known that both platypuses and echidna, related spiny ant, don't they call them anteaters? But no, maybe that's a colloquial name, but they're not anteaters or even closely related. Episode was it last 2 episodes ago? Episode 53 about mammals. Anyway, while biologists have long known that both platypuses and echidna produce this regulatory agent in their stomachs. Do they mean insulin? Because we all produce that. Oh, calendar. Why are you letting me down on such a cool topic?
I mean, you had to know this was coming. This is kind of your fault for getting.
Yeah, you're right.
Hopes this
the discovery of this hormone within the animal's venom had fascinating implications. According to researchers, the hormone's dual presence has caused it to evolve into a far more stable, potentially useful state. Scientists hope to begin exploring the chemical's use as a treatment for type 2 diabetes. I have a very hard time believing that they have literal insulin in their venom, the way that this makes it sound. I find that very hard to believe.
Yeah, I mean, part of me just
because
says,
well, what venoms are proteins, right? Which like hormones are, which insulin is a hormone, are proteins too, but they're very different. They just function very, very differently, and I would be very surprised.
I mean, I have like the always novice science question, which is how did this ever even come up? Like, who was in the lab and was like, we're gonna take some platypus venom?
And so I would say they were probably just studying the platypus venom and maybe saw a molecule that like looks similarly to insulin.
Okay. I mean, I suppose that would make sense. I mean, I'm with you. This is one of those that sounds a bit far-fetched, but I mean, hey, if you're a scientist looking to study this, I imagine there's quite a lot of money in it for you if you can make this work, so go for it.
All right, we're finally into December, and we're in the home stretch. We've got 4 left.
All right, so I've got to go 4 for 4 to hit my original target.
Yeah. So we're on December 3rd, and it is post-2010.
2017.
2018. You've been so close so many times. So, headline.
All right, what we got?
Lonesome George helps explain tortoise lifespan.
Lonesome George?
Yes, Lonesome George was the name of an individual tortoise and I guess they're looking at his
This
genetics. So,
this guy related to like Curious George, George
well,
Washington.
you'll see why they called him lonesome. Um,
Oh,
Geneticists from Yale University announced that they had successfully analyzed the genetic code of Lonesome George, the last tortoise of the species Chelinoidus
I
abing-
was worried you were gonna say
yeah,
that.
abingdonii, who passed away in 2012. Scientists have long been interested in the species, which could live more than 100 years in captivity because of the animal's longevity and disease resistance. The team from Yale discovered that Lonesome George possesses numerous genes related to DNA repair, improved immune response, and cancer suppression that were uncommon in other vertebrates with shorter lifespans. Experts hope that the tortoise will continue to provide illuminating information as to genes responsible for health and longevity. So,
That's gotta be so weird for the researchers or whoever is like in charge of the facility where, because I know this isn't the only example of this where it's like, okay, we know we've got the one species left, or we have three males or whatever the case might be, and we know this is it, and just knowing just knowing this is it for a whole species, it, there's something eerie about that.
well, that's going to be more and more common, sadly. Uh,
Yeah, yeah,
so,
damn.
we have another weekend one. So this is December 11th, post 2010.
I really don't know where you came up with the whole. Oh, we got a whole bunch coming up that are really old.
I didn't say a whole bunch, I said a few. And one, I mean, you got a 50-50 shot for, because we got two left after this one.
I'm not sure that's how 50-50 shots work, but okay. So this is post 2010,
Yes.
2016.
2018.
The 2018 is
There's been a
really
lot of
coming through.
2018s.
Yeah,
Yeah.
lots of 2018s coming up here.
So, ancient supernovae may have blasted marine life.
May have blasted marine life.
Yep.
What does
That's
blasted mean?
hit with force. I don't know. So a
Thank you,
supernova.
Gavin.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Supernova for
Webster
anybody
Davidson.
anybody not aware, a supernova is when a star explodes. Certain types of stars. Some do this, some don't. But it's basically the end of their life cycle, because stars have a life cycle just like animals do. Um, and so this is how stars create more stars. They explode, and in order to get any elements higher up on the periodic table than iron, they need to be formed in a supernova. Extremely high energy, extremely high radiation. Um, and so apparently there's some form of evidence that this happened at some point to Earth or nearby. Anyway, astrophysicists from the University of Kansas published their findings into the possibility that ancient supernovae, so they're saying plural because it's supernovae instead of supernova. So novae is the plural. So multiple supernova originating close to Earth may have killed off large marine life some 2.6 billion years ago. Seabed analysis indicates that one or more supernovae may have exploded only 150 light years from Earth, ravaging our oceans. I would like to see their evidence for that. Because, so around that same time, was an event that we will talk about at some point in the podcast more in depth, called the Great Oxidation Event. Which is exactly what it sounds like. It's when Earth got, reasonable levels of atmospheric oxygen for the first time. And that killed off a whole bunch of stuff because everything up till that point was adapted to not have oxygen. So to the things that don't need oxygen is poison. So,
like, can I have an example of something that would apply to?
Just bacteria. The only thing around at this time was bacteria and other single-celled things. Which also is, I'm very confused at why the calendar says may have killed off large marine life, because the largest things at the time were like maybe a couple of cells. So,
Hmm. Okay.
calendar.
Yeah. I got nothing to add on that one.
All right. Second to last. December 20th, pre 2000 or 2009 or pre.
Okay, so this one has to be the one that's really early. So,
Maybe.
what was our last one, right?
No, second to last.
A second. Oh, jeez. I don't know. All right, I'm gonna preemptively guess 2003 for both of these ones.
You are incorrect on both. 1996.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow,
So
1996.
that's why I told you. I'm like, there's an oldie.
Man, I was still crapping my little diapers at this point.
By this point, I also was. I was 7 months old, 8 months old.
This is you said December 96?
Yep.
Yeah, so I was 13 months old at this point.
So on December 20th, 1996, Carl Sagan dies.
Ooh, the Cosmos with Carl Sagan.
Excellent show. So on December 20th, 1996, Dr. Carl Sagan, the famed astrobiologist and astronomer, died. Sagan was a pioneer in the field of exobiology, which is like the study of life on other planets and, hypothesizing and theorizing about what life would be like, how we would find it, that kind of thing. An invaluable consultant to NASA, an avid supporter of the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, and one of the most inspirational forerunners of scientific celebrity. Sagan was a best-selling author of numerous books and won the Pulitzer Prize for nonfiction for The Dragons of Eden. In addition to his staggering contributions to astrobiology, the origin of life, and research on planetary atmospheres, Sagan is known for popularizing astronomy and supporting science, particularly with his hit television series Cosmos. Sagan
So I have,
is re- hmm?
keep going. I'm sorry. I thought you were done.
Sagan is remembered by his contemporaries and admirers as genuine and untiring. Oh yeah, why can't I read? And untiring in his support of the sciences and of the scientific community.
I mean, I have a number of like things and questions and parts to add on for this. But did you ever watch the original Cosmos? Because I never had a
I sure
chance
did.
to.
I sure did.
I'm so I mean, one thing that I always think is important with all of this, and I know a lot of people will criticize kind of people in this field, but I always think it's wildly important to have the right kinds of science communicators, which is part
Oh,
of what
for
we're trying to do
sure.
on this show.
Yeah.
And you know, my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Carl Sagan did that close to as well as anyone. Again, especially in the 80s and 90s,
Yeah.
was just making all this stuff accessible to people so that they can get into those fields and become more experts into it.
Yeah, absolutely. He and Bill Nye were close
Hmm.
friends.
Oh, were they
Um,
really?
yep. Uh, and for a little bit of a personal connection, Carl Sagan was on the faculty at Cornell University in Central New York. Um, that's where he did, that's where he did all of his research based out of. Um, and as controversial of a person as he also is, Neil deGrasse Tyson was also, brought up from New York City to spend some time with Carl Sagan at Cornell, and took over the Cosmos series and sort of revamped it not terribly long ago. And I watched that, and that was also very, very good.
That was going to be one of my other questions that I know Tyson had sort of redone it for. I did it go for any more than one season?
No.
I was going to ask you, like, is that one worth watching? The
Yeah,
the new one.
absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, science communication for as much good work as it is. I hope I think we have some sciencey people listening here. I love y'all very dearly. A lot of the people that are really good at science are probably not the same kind of people that are going to look good on camera.
Yeah, no, it really does. Doing science and communicating science are very different skills.
Right. And as we can see with this calendar, the part of what we're doing, like, you know, you got to do better than, writing some headlines and cherry picking, studies and pseudo facts and like it really is a lot of hard work that needs to be done in order to effectively do the kind of work that, Carl Sagan was able to do, as well as, Bill Nye the Science Guy was probably the show of my childhood, in elementary and middle school science classes,
Yeah, me too.
um, to learn science. And I will say one more show. I remember almost nothing about it other than that I thought it was the coolest show ever. And I'm curious to if you remember this at all. But there was a show, I believe it was on PBS, called Zoom. Do you have
I,
any memory of this show?
like I've heard of it, but I don't think I ever watched it myself.
Okay. I remember for quite a long time that it was kids doing science,
Okay.
which was, again, especially, I was very young at that point, but it was one of the coolest things that could possibly be going, was kids doing that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, all right, that's all I have to say on that one.
And then
We it? Is it
finally, for
all
our
right?
last one, we
Do
are
we get a
December
reguess?
23rd, post, or I guess 2010 or more recent.
I mean, I'll just go with it. 2018.
Unfortunately, no.
Ugh,
2015.
all right.
Crows recorded creating special tools.
Crows recorded creating special. There's some weird alliteration with that one. I can't quite put my finger on it, but okay.
So, biologists from the University of Exeter publicized footage. I'm guessing that they mean published? Publicized? Footage of what they say are New Caledonian crows fashioning specialized hooks to use in hunting insect prey. While the intelligence and ingenuity of crows has long since been established in the scientific community, the footage represented the first actual recording of tool making by the birds and serves as a concrete evidence that crows utilize tools in much the same way as several primates. Experts say that miniature spy cams were developed and attached to the crows, allowing them to gather the footage and describing the behavior as entirely natural and easy to miss. This achievement adds yet more evidence that tool making is common among various different types of animals and not limited to certain primates, as was once believed by biologists. And in fact, that was a uh, really like defining characteristic that people use to define humans for a long time. How we're different from the beasts. Is we use tools, we're civilized. But it's like,
Are we?
I mean, that's a little bit of a like racial term anyways. Like, what does civilized even mean?
Yeah,
But
right, right,
anyway,
yeah.
but yeah, like lots of animals use tools. Lots of animals. And like crows are generally considered pretty smart. Um but I think there's been evidence of like turtles using tools before, or at least like
Wow.
maybe not making them like these crows did, but like using thing to get other thing is not at all uncommon. And there's one particular, I forget which genus or which species it was, but one of our ancestors uh, was named, like their scientific name means handyman. I think it's Homo habilis, because they were thought to be the first tool users. And it's like, well, crows have been around for a while. I think they've been doing it for quite a while longer than we have. And even then, like, Homo habilis was almost certainly not the first one of our ancestors to use tools. So, anyway,
Yeah.
that is going to wrap up our sort of filler end of year holiday special.
Farewell to the calendar. And if I might add, good riddance.
Yeah, absolutely. For as much time as we've spent with the calendar, we didn't gain anything from it, except maybe
We
frustration.
we gained
Uh,
we gained a podcast along the way, and
I guess, yeah, that's true.
that may well be worth it. So I believe we decided that our new bit next year is going to be a today in history. Sort of at the beginning of every episode, make me do a little bit of work for the podcast while Gavin is coming up with these pages and pages of notes.
Yeah,
I will be
absolutely.
Googling what happened on every Wednesday throughout history. But until then, we will see you in the new year. But my name is Mike, and that is Gavin. This has been episode 55 of I Wish You Were Dead, a podcast about things that used to be alive. And Gavin, I'm looking forward to what the new year has in store for us. We can get to episode 100 next year if we don't screw it up.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, we've got a lot of space between now and then, but we'll get there at some point.
I mean, we're more than halfway there. Which, how many episodes did you think we were going to get done when we started this?
I have no idea.
I thought the number was going to be 3.
Really, you thought that little?
I thought that just the it takes a lot to actually get things going, and then it takes even more to, like, once you started and done the first few, and I thought 30 was going to be the number, and then just neither of us would talk about it again. But we are now 55 episodes in, and as my girlfriend stands next to me saying, "Is it time for us to go to bed?" I say to girlfriend, "Yes, it is time for
It
us to go
sure
to bed.
is.
It is time to end the podcast." Gavin, here's to 2022.
Absolutely, buddy. I'll talk to you next week.